everybody, welcome to seminar number 2. Just wanted to dive right in. We'll be looking at about 45 minutes, 50 minutes here, and you'll be able to see the questions below that you'll need to finish at the end of this. So let's dive right in. I have a wonderful quote here from Marcus Aurelius, and I really enjoy a lot of meditations where this comes from. I'm just going to read it to you as you're probably reading it yourself. Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our disposition, because our actions can accommodate and adapt. The impediment to action becomes the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Now I want you to keep this in mind. Especially that last part, what stands in the way becomes the way. This idea of how we can approach challenges and obstacles in our lives, how we can deal with adversity, how we can work with feelings of being overwhelmed and stressed and burnt out. The typical experience for students as we come into the halfway mark and midterm periods. Sign-in sheet usually gets handed out at this point. I want to remind you to set your intentions. I've just given you one to think of as you're going through this, how we deal with obstacles. What stands in the way becomes the way. Reminding and acknowledging you guys are mandated to be here. You have to complete this portion of the program. So turn your free will switch on. You are here for you, not because you have to be. You can take a little bit of control back by saying, you know what, I am here for me. I've got an intention. I've got something that I can take away from this. I'm going to be trying to figure out how to deal with a challenge or whatever it may be. A particular problem that I have in mind. A quick reminder about our model of success, identifying goals and challenges. You just maybe identified one challenge. Creating a plan, gaining some new skills and knowledge, applying that plan, evaluate, adapt. So we've just gone through this for the month of September. You've been applying a plan for 30-some days right now. Now it's time to start thinking about evaluating and adapting. Adapting was also in Marcus Aurelius' quote there, we can always adapt. Especially our actions. So we want to evaluate what's working well, what's not working well, what am I doing, what could I start doing if I'm going to replace something. If I'm going to stop something, I need to replace it with something. So what have I realized, you know what, this is what I need to be doing. I'm going to start doing more of it. Adapt our plan, make a new plan, and start applying that plan for the next 30 days, and then we'll check in again. In continuous development, continuous growth by this evaluate, monitor, evaluate, and adapt. A quick reminder about 2 of our main mantras about number 1, actions come before feelings. If you want to feel confident, take action towards things that make you feel confident. If you want to feel happy, do things that make you feel happy. The feelings doesn't have to come first. If you want to be motivated, then take massive action. Take a lot of action and then motivation will come. You'll be energized. You will be feeling more successful. You will be feeling more productive. And that will then give you that momentum to persevere and persist with your plan. And a quick reminder, you're doing this for nobody else other than you. If we need to find motivation in the moment and a specific intrinsic motivation, I think you'll be going through the motivation module soon in cognitive strategies. Going through that and reminding ourselves consistently, I'm doing this for me. Not for anybody else, I'm doing it for me because I can. So let's have a look at our agenda. I've got 4 things that I've got to get through, some administrative items. I'm going to look at just a little bit of psychology of learning and the role that beliefs play. I'm going to look at how does this all fit into an effective review. So what can that look like? And then finally we're going to look at the week. We'll look at gaining some perspective and gaining some control by using a weekly schedule instead of a daily or a monthly schedule. And just the role that the week can play. Just a reminder of some important dates there. Withdrawals are coming up, the next seminar's coming up, and reading week's also coming up as well. Keep those in mind. Marking, I am a little bit behind in the marking. My apologies about that. I had a fight with eClass and it deleted all of my grades, so I'm behind on one of the assignments. So hopefully I'll catch up over the next few days with learning check number 3. Appointments, again, use the online calendar. Choose from the Fresh Start option. Do not choose from the FBSH option. That stands for Football Study Hall. There's for student athletes. That's not this group. So I have 2 different groups on there so that they can book appointments. Do not choose the afternoon ones. If you need an afternoon appointment, then send me an email or call the Student Success Center to find a different time if the mornings don't work. How to pass, just a quick run through. We have 2 students here. One here on the left is doing pretty well. They've got a whole bunch of 80s and 90s and a couple of hundreds there. This means that they've passed the quiz. Anything above 80 here means you get full points. So we know our point value by referring to our Fresh Start activity schedule. So 80 above is a pass, below 80 is a 0. So course overview and adapting to university, I can come over to here and I can see right here, course overview, quiz, and adapting to university 4 and 6. So I just write my numbers down here, and this number here has to equal 80 at the very end after I've completed all of these things, or 80 points worth. So I can miss some of these. You can miss some quizzes. It's okay to miss a couple of the quizzes. Technically, you can miss 20 points from here. So that's okay to miss something. We have to allow you to master the material, but also allow for life circumstances to get in the way. Just to have a look over here, you can see that the student here missed the first 2 quizzes. They missed 2 in the afternoon, in the later of September, later part of September, and they've failed 2 here as well. So this student has actually failed the course. They can't, even if they completed everything else, they can't make it up. So this one here, the consequence of doing this is you have to pay for it again and do it all over again in the winter semester. If this is your scenario, I would highly recommend continuing doing these anyway, so that it will make it a little bit easier when you come to do it in the winter semester. So you're not doing it all over again brand new. It'll be a little bit fresher in your mind as you finish off this material and these quizzes. Just a quick reminder, 80 or above, you get the point value. This here total in the activity schedule needs to be 80. If you find yourself in this scenario, reach out to me. If you find that you've got a couple of 72s or 75s, reach out to me as well. Send me an email and I'll take a look and I'll try and help you out. Again, it's in our best interest for you to master this material. It's totally doable. If I see that this person got a 47 and they're asking for help, and you can go and see the time that it was submitted. If you had 1 attempt out of the 3 and you did it at 11:45 p.m., that's not showing me that you're trying very hard. So there's not much point helping that student out of that if they're not willing to put in play their part in this program. So again, if you're clearly giving this a go, you've attempted 3 times and you got 73 times, of course we'll give you a chance to help you out. We'll take a look at that information and we'll see how we can help. That's it for this part. We'll jump over to the next section right away. So what are the beliefs that we may hold about our learning, and what role do they play in our learning in the first place? His argument in his videos is pretty clear. It just says if you believe something, then that's the way you will act. Your beliefs will influence your behaviors. So if you believe that I have to go to classes, as that will lead to learning, then you go to classes. If you end up going to a few classes and realizing and having the opinion that, oh, this professor is useless, I'm better off just following only the textbook, then that's now your new opinion. That's your new belief about this scenario. So then that will lead to your actions. So your new action will be not going to a class and just finding time to go through the textbook. So this is when we have, if our beliefs are what we're going to say here and what he's going to say is that he calls them beliefs that make you stupid. We're just going to say these are beliefs that have been researched thoroughly over several decades, saying that if we follow these beliefs, they do not lead to success. They do not lead to learning. And then there are some beliefs or some opinions that are going to lead to learning and more academic success. So those are the ones that we just wanted to highlight in this part here. So let's have a look. The first one is the ones that make us fail. Number one, learning is fast. If we believe that learning is fast, we're going to tentatively speed through things. We're going to read too much. We're not going to slow down enough and do the work that it takes. We're also going to think that we can do it last minute, and it's going to work out well for us. But we know that cramming doesn't work out well for us. So learning is not typically fast. Some cases it might be, but not when we're learning 4 or 5 classes worth, 3, 4, 5 classes worth of complicated material in a short period of time. Knowledge is factual. If I just focus on the facts, if I just focus on the details, our knowledge is inherently associated and connected. We've all seen any images of the brain where we're showing that neurons are connected and we're making thousands of connections with that information that and our general knowledge and general understanding. Talent is inborn. If we believe that I'm not talented at this thing, then I can't do it. You see this pop up in the sciences. I'm not a math guy. I'm not a chem guy. I'm a physics guy, or I'm a biology guy. I can't do the other ones. Again, we know that we grow and develop. That's one of the things that we do consistently. If we have the belief that we're good at multitasking, again, research has shown over and over and over again that it leads to poorer and poorer results. The most common one for use for examples is texting and driving. People believe that they can do both at the same time, where it shows over and over and over again that you lose lots and lots of reaction time and that you cannot do both at the same time. You're doing one or the other, even though it feels like we're doing them at the same time. Technically, the car's moving while you are texting. However, you're not in control and able to react the same as if you were focusing on the driving. So the same goes for any complicated task. If you're trying to do a complex task like studying or reading a textbook or preparing for an exam, it's going to be difficult to do any other medium level task. Having the TV on the background is still distracting. Having your phone near you is distracting. Having music playing with words is going to be distraction. As you're trying to read words, having songs that are playing in the background is challenging. And it will be distracting. The belief that I need motivation before I get started. This idea of, oh, I just lost my motivation. Again, this comes back to ours. Do the work, do the actions that lead to the feelings that you want. If you want to be more motivated, take action that leads to motivation. In the case of motivation, you just need to take massive action. Make a plan and start working that plan. Take massive action. Start doing as much as you can right away, and we'll start building some momentum and some confidence that we're being productive, that we are doing this, and that we are able to do this. We'll start seeing the fruits of our labor. To put in a cliche there, this will lead to more motivation to take more action. You would have built momentum. And finally is time. I just need more time. We don't want to work harder. We want to work smarter. That was mantra number 1. We want to be working smarter. It's not necessarily more time. We just need better quality of studying, being more effective. So these are the beliefs that are going to slow us down and lead to much poorer results. What we want to do is we want to be looking at good metacognition, decreasing our distractions to increase our focus, deep processing for learning, and practicing appropriate retrieval and application. Going through how we learn, you would have seen the information processing. I'm going to review that in a second. But you would have been able to go through that information processing, just looking at that transfer from short-term memory to long-term memory, and how are we able to use our ability to pay attention. So these 4 things is some of the things that we're going to be looking at today and that you would have already covered. The first one is what does metacognition really look like? What we want to do is metacognition is really a way of paying attention. And after that, it is a way of talking to ourselves. We want to look at what's going on and start asking ourselves some questions. We want to be checking in. It's like we have a mentor or a coach sitting over our shoulder, just looking over our shoulder, just watching what we're doing, and then just asking a few questions. Non-judgmentally, if we start doubting ourselves, that's not metacognition, that there's worrying. So what we could do is we could use the categories that we've had for self-management: motivation, methods of learning, use of time, physical and social environment, and then monitoring performance. And we can ask ourselves questions as we go through any learning task. If you're sitting down to read a text, if you're sitting down to watch this video, if you're sitting down in class, what is the purpose of this task? What can I expect to learn? What is interesting or curious about this for me? To guide my motivation. How should I go about learning this? How is it organized? How can I connect the dots? What am I missing? So checking out the ways that we're learning it, and so on and so on. Lots and lots of questions that we could do. I did find this wonderful infographic here just on before, during, and after any task. So we can look at the categories that we have for self-management and what we can control, or we can have a look at any particular task before, during, and after. You'll notice that this is a common theme for any task we're doing. A self-regulated learner, a strategic learner, does a pre-plan. They are always looking at before a pre-task analysis, and then a during task analysis, and then a post-task analysis. We're always looking at before, during, and after this particular thing to be able to, this would go under monitoring of performance. How do we get to this state of awareness, though? Metacognition is awareness of our own thinking, awareness of our own processing, being able to listen to what's going on and being able to respond to that in a productive way. So I want to give you a new metaphor. Last month I talked about the push-pause and just noticing what's going on, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and just noticing those thoughts. And that there's one way, that noticing, that ability to notice that you're doing something. For example, you can notice, first of all, you can see me, or you can see the presentation. You can hear me, but you can also notice yourself hearing me. You can also notice yourself watching the presentation or the video. You're able to notice these things. So it's just this observing position. So a great way to understand this and get this point across is just a stage show metaphor. So imagine that your entire life is happening up on stage. You're up on stage and you're acting it out. You're sitting in your chair right now, wherever you happen to be. You're looking at your laptop, you're looking at your desktop, maybe you're watching this on your phone. And you're able to hear my voice, but you're all on the stage. So the curtains around you, the wood floor is right below your feet, and your entire room is up on the stage. And you look out into the audience, and there's nobody there except for one person. And that's you. You're sitting there watching your entire life go by. You're able to see the bigger picture. You're able to zoom in, zoom out. You're able to take in your entire surroundings. You're able to notice what you're thinking up there. You're able to notice what you're feeling up there. You're able to notice what other people are doing on the stage. This is metacognition. This is the awareness that we want. We want to be able to just step back and look at what's going on. Being able to watch it as if I'm a member of the audience looking at and watching this particular thing take place. In this case, your life take place. So what we can do is, I'm just going to include the steps here. Pushing pause and just realizing, hey, you know what? My life is a stage. I'm going to turn the lights up really bright right now. And I'm going to just jump out into the audience and just see what's going on. We just want to notice what's happening. You could use those categories that we just mentioned in the previous slide of motivation, learning, strategies, use of time, physical and social environment, and monitoring our performance. We could use those to start asking some questions. Notice if you're moving towards your goals or away from your goals. Or you could start noticing beforehand, during, and after the learning task. What can you be doing better? Monitoring that performance from this audience perspective. Now this is, your life is on stage and there's you that is out, that is able to observe and watch. Now this is two parts to you, but really there's only the one you. But we're able just to step back into this safe place of just watching what's going on and just to really assess, am I learning this? What could I be doing differently? What's working really well? This is working really well, so I'm going to continue to do that. Being able to just watch from that observer point of view. Choosing to change direction in that moment. Saying, you know what, that's not quite working, or I'm confused by this part. What could I try that's different, that will help me to get through this obstacle, get through this challenge right now, or just any confusion I may be feeling. And then we start to adapt. We try something new. We have to start experimenting with what we have available to us. So really the bottom line with metacognition is start noticing and talking to yourself. Start noticing and start talking to yourself, asking questions, noticing what's going on, and making changes if you have to. Effective reviews. I'm just going to quickly run through this as this is going to be pretty standard, but I'm going to switch to giving you an example of what this may all look like. The two things we need to really look at are just the types of processing we're doing. Are we doing shallow or deep? Or are we doing, and then how do we apply this? What are the main principles of learning that we want to do? So a quick review of information coming in through our memory. We have the sensory memory that lasts for a few milliseconds. Then we have short-term or working memory where we do a lot of our thinking, which is directly connected to our long-term memory where we have three tasks. We transfer, we store, and then we recall. So we've got three tasks in here that we really want to be focusing on. Stimulus in academics is typically through our visual and auditory channels where we'll be reading and watching presentations and listening to presentations and lectures. We must pay attention if we want to remember. Metacognition, you can see, is up here as one of the overarching things that we'll do in the moment with our working memory. And then we see that to transfer and to recall and to store, we want to be elaborating, building connections, and building mental models. These mental models will help with the other two. Overall, we need to set that motivation or that intention and also be aware that we've got to control that. We do have this point of view from the audience that I can always see this happening. So there is this executive control that does control most of this information or these processes, these skills. Sorry, jumping through there. So just having a look, just the two different types. So we've got a list of the shallow ones, and we've got a list of the deep ones. So again, we've gotten you to practice most of these. You may still be falling into default mode where you go back and you're still doing these because we haven't been able to start incorporating these into our studying instead of adding them on. I'm going to skip over the short-term memory test. What we're going to do is we're just going to look at short-term memory as still just that rehearsal, just repeat, 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 repeat. So these are the shallow ones. What we want to be doing is we want to be starting to practicing elaborating, building connections, and building mental models. So the question is, what does that look like? This one here is a great example. If we have to memorize 16 terms, this one here happens to be foods to memorize. What we can do is we can build a mental model, and so instead of trying to remember these individually or as separate terms, what we can do is we can build a framework for this. We can find out how they're connected, and if we were to elaborate on this food, one great way to do this is we take these 16 ideas and we put them into a context that we've already experienced before. We've had dinner before, so we're able to put all of these items. So not only do we have 16 things, what we created, where we ended up creating 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, we ended up creating all these categories to store this information. We ended up creating more information. But because of these lines, these connections, and these arrows, we're able to store that information much easier than trying to remember fewer items. So this one here is an example of elaboration. This one is an example of a mental model, and it's a way of also building connections. So that's why we got you to practice that in learning check number 3. So our main ones is we want to be practicing using those deep ones. We must practice answering. That's where we're at. So here we have one lecture that we're wanting to try and do one of our daily reviews, that cost system of completing our notes, organizing our notes, and summarizing our notes, and then finally testing ourselves. So if we're looking at one specific lecture, this student came in, it was for Econ 281. They said that they felt that this was pretty unorganized. I was able to hold on to this one and keep it. And so what we want to do is we just want to go through slide by slide, having a look at just the headings. What we would typically do is you would have taken some notes on here, probably have some squiggles on the side here, any symbols or your notes that you've added onto this. This student printed these ones off fresh, so we didn't have those notes. So you would have had some sort of completed notes on the top there. But one of their main complaints was that it just felt very unorganized. What we saw on first inspection was right away, we actually had little bullet points right here that just said, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. Now the way that we want to make this organized typically is to create an outline. This has an outline, we just numbered it, well in this case lettered it, and we went through and just tried to find out where all these headings are. And so when we're creating an outline, we're just going to try and identify title, and then our headings, and then any subheadings that may be in. Here we see we've got a main heading and then we've got a small subheading here. That's all we want to go through and do, and we'll create that outline. By doing that, we get to see how it's organized. Then we can go into having a look as we go through, how are the details organized. For example, we can have a quick look here and saying, okay, this here is organized by economics. This here is just the answer to this question. This is a definition answering that question. This here, I guess, is a type of visual representation. I'd say this is just a diagram or a flow chart of some sort. So we can just label what's on that slide. So as we go through, we can just continue to do that. We've got heading, subheading. On here, I'm guessing this is a definition. It says the Greek, and then it has some questions that are related to macroeconomics. These two slides are associated together. I've got macroeconomics. So immediately I can see, because of my training, we can see that this is going to be a matrix of some sort. This is a table. I can have microeconomics on one side, macroeconomics on the other side. It's saying Greek twice and questions twice. So I know that's how I'd set up my table. So I can see how this information is organized as I go through. I jumped ahead a little bit. Let's have a quick look at what we had done. We just go through looking at that one by one. How is it all organized? So here, what we're pretty used to is just creating a normal one-page outline. Here's my outline. We just copied that down straight away. We went through, and section A had a definition for part A, and it had that diagram. Section B had microeconomics, it had a definition, Greek, and some examples. So we put that down. We know that's going to be a table. In the tools part, economic tools, we had two sections, economics and mathematical. Economics had these sections, these subheadings, and then this area was sub-subheadings. Under mathematical, they had 3 different types, so we know this is going to be a table as well. As soon as I've got mathematical tools, as soon as there's plural, I know that I can compare and contrast these. So I can go through and say, okay, what kind of table am I going to make? Here, there was an example and a definition. In the other slides, there was the definition, the concept, and then an example, concept, example. So I know that I've got my matrix all organized. And then part D had a whole bunch of slides that just had definition of that thing, an example, and its significance. Again, another table. We've got comparing and contrasting these types of analysis. Pretty straightforward. So now we can go through, once we've made the outline, just a linear fashion, this is what you'd be used to, we can go through and start making visual representations. So this here is a one-page summary of the entire lecture. Now it doesn't have all the details, so we have to go through and find those details. What we can first do is we can do a visual hierarchical structure of this entire lecture. This here is economics. We gave it a heading, we had tools, and we had analysis. Look over here, we've got economics, these 2 types, tools, and then the analysis. So we've got those 3 things we talked about today. Then under economics, we've got the science, we've got micro and macro. Tools, we had the 2 different types, and then under analysis, the 2 different types, and just what they're called. Pretty straightforward. This is a wonderful way to help us start summarizing one whole lecture. What's easier to review? Reread these, reread this, or reread this and rewrite this. Again, this is working with that visual spatial memory that we know is so powerful. Next is diving into the details. So now we have to go through section A. Let's go through. We know that there was a diagram, so let's make sure that we go through and we can have those details in there. We know that section B was a table. It was the 2 different types of microeconomics, so we want to go through and fill in those details. Once we had a look, there was a little bit more that we added on once we started having a look at those details. The same for the tools. We can go through and have a look at those details. We found that one slide was actually a diagram and it was an analogy, which was really helpful and very visual. What's easier to review, that one slide that described this, or this diagram with the arrows and the labels? And again, here's our mathematical tools, 3 different types of tools, and how we can compare and contrast them. We can start seeing that there's major differences between these. And then finally, one last table for the analysis part. Again, we're able to now compare and contrast and see those things. Instead of slide by slide, we're looking at them and joining all those dots, connecting those dots. What we can see here is the next part. The student, I didn't do, so that there's organizing. We didn't do the summarizing in the session, so what we did is we skipped ahead and started making a list of questions. Now these 10 questions were based on the documents that we had right there. We went through our organization of the topic, and we just started asking questions about what we were looking at. And that there's how you do a daily review. That there is one. If you have to review for your weekly review and you had to review 3 lectures, if this econ class was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you'd be reviewing these. Instead of reviewing 3 of these with just your notes scrambled on them, you'd now have 3 of these to go through. Seeing how, reminding yourself how this information is organized, and also conceptually and factually and skillfully testing yourself. Very powerful stuff. I want to show you one more quick example. What we'll do is, this one is exactly the same on a larger scale. This is one, I think this is 2 lectures, this is 2 lectures, and then this was, I think this is joined together. This is the 3rd lecture. What we're able to do, the exact same process. All we asked of the student was to create that outline. We made, from those 3-4 lectures preparing for a final exam, we just made the linear outline, one after the other. Keep making the outline, just looking at headings, subheadings, and sub-subheadings, going through and just adding in what was on the slides, and just going through and creating that visual outline. As we're going through, you can even see that we're looking at the information as we go, and we sketched out, okay, this is going to be a table because it's 4 different types, and we can see how to put those 4 types into a matrix. What we wanted to do then, after we made that 6-page outline of those 3 weeks of lectures, we're able to create a 1-page visual. This here is spatially organized into 3 different topics, 3 different main topics, and then each topic is broken down. What we were able to see is that they all built on each other, and they actually flowed across in a perfectly logical and reasonable manner. Then they had to go through and do the details, just like we did in the last one. This one here, we did the overview, and then the student went away, and they were able to also start off. We didn't do the summary part in our session. We ran out of time for that, but what we did is we just started off making some questions. The student did mention that for this class in the final that he went away with a study group, and he was able to, working with this material, they came up with 50 questions between the 3 or 4 of them. They said that they predicted somewhere between 15 and 20 of the questions on the final. So again, we know this stuff works. It is very straightforward. It's incredibly systematic. We create organizational structure by creating an outline, which is familiar to students. Then we use those graphical representations of hierarchies, flowcharts, diagrams, and the matrix, the tables, which are so powerful. They hold so much information, and they allow us to connect more dots than we can if we were doing it one at a time. Trying to memorize 16 facts instead of trying to build all of these 16 individual facts, instead of trying to build all of these several multiples of connections, which make it much easier to recall later on. Then we must also practice testing ourselves. We've stored it. Now we've created meaning out of it by connecting dots. Now we need to test that meaning and practice recalling it so that we're good to go for our exams. All right, catch you in the next one.
So you just saw that demonstration of the 2 different reviews, one reviewing just 1 lecture and one reviewing several lectures over a 2 or 3 week period. Just a reminder, I've got this slide back up here. I feel like I touched on it a little bit too quickly in that first video earlier. Just a reminder that we want to be using those deep processing study techniques, just those ones that you just saw an example of. That COST method, completing our notes, organizing our notes, summarizing our notes, and testing ourselves about those notes. And there's 10 or 20 different variations of how to organize the material, or how to summarize it, or how you can elaborate on it, or how you can test yourself on it. Picking one each time you come to review. But this is just about building that product. Now, when we use these deep processing methods, it comes to principle number 2. We have to practice. We need to let these become automatic. And this is the part that's holding us back. At the moment, these are skills, but skills can be learned and developed, and we can grow. So we can always learn them, we can always develop them, we can always become better. And they will slowly take place of our ineffective, non-workable ones. We have to start being honest with ourselves. We're not doing what's working, what's not working. So being able to have that reflection in, is this effective or not? And slowly replacing the ineffective and increasing the effective. So practice is the only way to get good at this deep processing. In the beginning, it's going to be really hard. Finally, principle number 3, just as a reminder, is some content we may have to overlearn. And so overlearning is not practicing the techniques until they're automatic, but practicing specific answers until they are automatic. So this here is some anatomy and physiology comes to mind, some structural understanding or the foundational knowledge in mathematics and the sciences, biology, chemistry. There may be some things that we need to know, concrete, know the answers to. In the humanities, there may be some social foundational theories that we need to know. We need to know Marx, we need to know Weber, maybe we need to know James, we need to know the classics. We need to know those theories really cold, so getting them down so we've overlearned them. And that there's by repeating those answers until we've got them automatic. Just as a reminder. So what we'll do is we'll quickly jump ahead to our last portion of the seminar, and that was time management. Before we jump ahead, here's just that takeaway for the previous video, just that examples there, completing our notes, organizing our notes, summarizing and testing ourselves. There's just for your to take home. The weekly schedule, the idea of the weekly schedule is really simple. What we want to do is we want to balance our monthly and our daily, our short-term goals with our long-term goals. And this is about, as you just saw, self-management is what we said in the first seminar. Here it's about self-regulation, the psychological term for self-management. And it's talking about doing. So we're very good at making these plans, but how can I get to doing what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis? We've also talked about this experience of having internal distractions, and we've been practicing the push pause. Today you learned about the stage show metaphor, being able to push pause and really just notice what's going on, what we're feeling, and especially those internal distractions, that private life that's not observable to anybody, but what's going on inside our heads as we go. You may be studying and you may be thinking of reading complex stuff, learning complex stuff. You may have to write complex stuff. Then you have to test yourself. You're reminding yourself, I'm tired, I've forgotten to eat, grades up on bear tracks yet for the previous semester. I wonder how my mum's doing. We've got social commitments. We've got deadlines and daily tasks that we're trying to do. We've got things that we're worried about for the future, some things that we're worried about overall in our entire life, and then just the basics. So this is a very common scenario. Our mind is very quick to flood us with unfinished business, past, present, or future. So what we want to do is, how can we manage this? How can we get some clarity? So what we want to do is we want to gain perspective is one advice, and taking control. And using those metacognition strategies that we learned earlier on in today's seminar, pushing pause or reminding ourselves that we're in the audience watching our life take place up on that stage, we're able to take some control and gain that perspective. Slow down all of that chatter that's going on, all those just uncomfortable feelings. And before we get hooked up and swept away in them, can we just push pause, slow down, just notice what's going on. Hey, look, I'm worrying a little bit. Hey, look, I need to gain some perspective and move towards my goals. Or I'm actually at the moment, I am moving away from my goals right now. This isn't helping me. What can I do to get back on track? So this one here, just to give you a little bit, we can try and use that weekly schedule to really create that routine. There is a wonderful book, Getting Stuff Done, by Alan. Oh, I should have looked that up quickly. I'm forgetting his name. Getting Stuff Done is one of the productivity gurus' guides. It is a wonderful book, and it has a wonderful flow for helping you to gain clarity and gain that perspective and gain some control over your time. Here he has this wonderful matrix just to show us what it's like to have these two playing off against each other. So the first one is very little control over their time and very little perspective on their time. So this person is just the reactor. They're just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. They're easily distracted, and I'm just putting out fires. Everything's very urgent. Everything seems very important, and I've got to get it all done. And I'm just going from one to the other, and I'm never doing any of them very, very well. what we can then do is we can give that person just a little bit more control over the time, so they start managing their time, but they've still got no perspective. They're only managing short-term what's right in front of them. They don't have that perspective of being able to balance long-term goals with what's happening right now on a day-to-day basis, so they become very inflexible. And this is the micromanager. This person has control over very ineffective things. So they're very, very busy, but they're not really improving or moving forward on their goals. The next person is, Alan calls it the crazy maker. I kind of think of it more as the daydreamer. This person has a lot of perspective. They've got a lot of goals. They're looking ahead. They've always got plans, and they've got a lot of big dreams, to the point that they might be a little bit excessive or unrealistic. But they have zero control over their time, so they do not plan for anything. So none of these plans come to fruition at all. And then we have the final one, the upper right hand quadrant is where we want to be, and we probably experience this at different parts of our lives or different domains in our lives, maybe as a brother or as a colleague or as a student or as a friend. We might be master and commander, maybe in our commissioner of our fantasy football league, or the captain or the coach of our dodgeball team. We end up having great perspective and great control over our time, that we get a lot of stuff done. So this is just that master and commander, that person that just gets a lot of stuff done over the course of the semester. This is our goal. So hopefully what we're going to do is get our weekly schedule to get us in that. So just having a look at that perspective and just giving us an understanding. I just use a quick analogy here of taking the long range shot, taking the wide angle shot, the close range shot, the wide angle shot, and then we also have that typical medium shot right in the middle. And what we can do is once we take those pictures, we can see the close-up shot. We get a lot of details on the bridge. We can see the arches very clearly. We can see that there's people on the other side there. We get a lot of detail, and that there's like our day-to-day lives. We're able to see everything that needs to be done in that moment. Then we have that bigger perspective, that big picture, that wide angle. We get a lot more information. We can see that day off in the distance here, but we've got that whole river there. We've got the path on one side, the grass on the other side. We can see a lot more in this picture, and so we're able to have that big picture of this is where I want to go, or this is where I'm heading. And so that there's our monthly idea. That's what we want to be. And then finally we have the medium range shot, which has the best of both of them. It gives us the details, most of the details of what's going on that bridge, and then it also includes some of that bank and more of that river, and it shows out a little bit more of the hill, and it's able to see just a little bit more, so we're able to connect to our long-term goals. So we can make sure that we're keeping track of both. We're getting what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis, but also we're able to keep in mind, have that perspective of what's going on a monthly basis. Our daily basis covers urgency, tasks, and next steps. Our monthly one is covering those long-term importances, those fundamental things that we need to be getting done. And our big picture, where are we heading? And finally, we're able just to create that balance. We're able to go from a big picture to the parts and then back to that big picture. Again, the best way that we encourage students to manage their week is through time blocking. Blocking off sets of time and then getting our stuff done. Being able to be as specific as possible. An example of this is going to be, I've got a student here that's doing 4 classes, econ, math, polls, and a night class for English. And if they're following our plan, we encourage people to do personal items, put them on here. So these personal items are also they're active, so there's a little bit of exercise in there. There's a little bit of socializing in there as well. Next part is we want to also include any weekly assignments on the weekly schedule. We don't necessarily, in the past we've asked you to put those weekly assignments on that, put that on the monthly calendar, but the monthly calendar can really be just for monthly tasks, that bigger picture stuff. So the monthly assignments, you could put those down here. This is when they're due, and we want to separate those as being something that gets their own specific time. We encourage students here to put in a buffer between the afternoon and the evening, and give yourself a break to travel home, take a break, relax, have some food. But we just say dinner, but it could be any sort of break that you want to put in. But just separating it, creating a buffer between the afternoon and the evening. Next, we want to do that review within 24 hours. If we're doing our effective review that we just saw, we want to do that right away when our memory is fresh of the class. So we put those reviews in. Here, English, we didn't want to do the review right after because it was so late. So we did the English review within 24 hours. So we did it the next day at 3, seemed to be the most appropriate time for this student. We want to include extra reading time. Remember, these reviews are just reviewing those lectures, so we want to put in reading time. English, we need to read beforehand, and we're also going to start it on Sunday and finish it on Monday if we have to. Math assignment, we do the review for math, and then we do our assignment as well. There's a separate task, so we put that in and it has its own time. And just in case it takes a little bit longer, we're able to start it on the Monday and then go through a little bit of math in the classroom and then doing a bit more review, and math in the classroom, a bit more review, and then we should be able to have enough understanding of the concepts to be able to tackle that assignment really well. We don't want to use the math assignments as a method for completing our homework and doing our learning. We want to do some conceptual understanding before we get to those assignments. We put in some reading for poli-sci, and we put in some reading for econ. Finally, this is how we connect it. This is how we connect the weekly schedule with the monthly schedule. When we have midterms, our classes don't stop. So we have to remember that I can't replace any of this. This is now our learning cycle. This can be fixed. This can be a routine that we can get into that makes it a little bit easier to complete. But it is our learning process. We can't give this up. We can't take away these reviews. I can't take away these readings because the readings don't stop. The reviews, the classes don't stop. So any midterm prep has to be additional. So we just found you can find 6 to 8 hours. This one here is easy to find 10 because I weren't working on the weekends. So find that extra time and just put it in as extra time. And then all we have to do is take this extra time and just copy these 5 bubbles. We've got 2 hours on Wednesdays, 2 hours on Thursdays, 4 hours on a Saturday, and then 2 hours on a Sunday. And we can just trace that onto our monthly calendar. And so what we can do is we can see that I've got my 2 hours on a Sunday, 2 hours on a Thursday, 2 hours on a Saturday. I've got my 2 hours on a Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm able to fill that up. So if I work with this is the backwards planning. So if I work with my math here, I've got 3 units I've got to cover. So I work backwards. The day before I want to be reviewing my unit 3. The day before that, I've got 2 hours, so I'm going to review units 2 and 3. On the Saturday, my next session, I'm going to be spending those 2 hours reviewing Unit 2, and then I'm going to review Unit 1 and Unit 1. What I can do is, with the other time that I've got there, the Wednesday and the other Saturday and Sunday session, I can do the same thing for Econ now. So Econ is here on the Wednesday. I don't have any review time, any extra midterm time on my Monday or Tuesday. So I go back to my first session. Before my midterm, I want to be covering chapters 4 and 5. Here, chapter 3 is a little bit more, so I'm going to do it as one on its own. And chapter 1 and 2, they're together. So I could, chapter 1 was pretty basic. It was just an introductory one. So I feel that I could, in those 2 hours, I could review both chapters. And that review would be just going through that process of preparing the material with graphic organizers, creating questions, and then spending some of that time testing myself. So just using that, prepare the material and test yourself so that each of these sessions, that's what you're doing, with some ratio of time. The testing part is probably only going to be 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you're generating your own questions, just going through some questions based on the content that you're covering, and just including that, incorporating that in every one of those sessions. So we're able just to work backwards, start at the end date, work backwards, fill in the time blocks that you've identified from your weekly schedule, and you're able to connect these all together. We're able to plan it all out, and you're able to review, spend some time reviewing every part. A reminder for the impediment to action becomes the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Whatever obstacle stands in your way, use that as a guide. And just reminding ourselves that we can pay attention to our beliefs. Those will affect us. Deep learning